yard. Okay. Good. These hummingbirds have spent the summertime up where the red is here. So from about right where we are here up into southern Canada. And as they're migrating south this time of year, their little bird brains tell them as soon as the day period starts getting shorter. So it's not really the weather that makes them head south. It's what's called photo period. So as the days start getting shorter, their little hummingbird brains said head south. So they head south and they kind of funnel through here. And one of the things we've learned from banding data in the last few years is that when they head south, they stay along the coast here. And they get down here into southern Mexico and even into some Central American countries right here. And they spend the winter time down there where there's lots of insects, lots of flowers blooming all winter long. And in the spring, when the day period starts getting a little longer, the little hummingbird brains say head north. But for some reason, they head up here to the Yucatan Peninsula and they fly nonstop across the Gulf of Mexico. And millions of birds don't make it every year. Especially if they're coming across the Gulf and they hit one of these little cold fronts that are coming across the Gulf with the north wind and the rain. You can go down and walk the beach in Galveston and Surfside after one of these fronts in April and see dead birds on the beach, birds that didn't make it. So it's a pretty rough life for these migrating birds that migrate thousands of miles. So we're going to put the bands on them when we catch them. And this is a hummingbird band right here. And that's going to go around their ankle. And that has a 6-digit number on it that's registered in an international database. And there, Jessica's got our first customer already. So we'll get another one of these out here in just a minute for you to take a look at. But let me get this one set up since we have our first customer here. And we don't want to keep our customers waiting. I'm going to bring it over. Let me get my extra eyeballs on here where I can see what we're doing. Thank you. So we'll take this little bitty band, and the first thing we have to do is open it up. Good job, Jessica.
What type of hummingbird is it?
Well, we think it's a ruby-throated hummingbird, but we're going to find out here for sure in just a minute. But typically all we catch here are going to be ruby-throated hummingbirds.
State Parks tumbler?
I'm so sorry. May I?
Oh, thank you. Let me just sit that over here in case somebody wants to sit there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for calling us out on that. That was our branding effort right there.
I know. See the little bird?
So we're going to get the little bird out. The first thing we want to do is make sure he doesn't already have a band on him, because we wouldn't want to put a second band on him, and I sure don't want to have to try to get a band off of one. So first thing I want to do is get the band on him, once he doesn't have a band. That way if I fumble him here, and I've been known to fumble him, he already has a band on him. So there, he's got a band on him right there. So now while we have him and we're putting him through this, we want to try to collect some data on him. And all this data will go in a international database that'll be available to scientists or ornithologists, which are scientists that study birds from now on. So we know that this is a ruby-throated hummingbird.
What tells you that?
The bright red throat on there.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. So for now on, this hummingbird's name will forever be N03912. How'd you like a name like that? So we're going to measure the length of his bill, and this is something that scientists like to know. And his bill is 14 millimeters long, and that can help us a little bit also determine, if we're not sure, it can help us determine whether it's a male or a female. Another thing we're going to look at is the corrugation on his bill. When hummingbirds are born, their bills are really rough like this. And over the course of the first year, just from running them in and out of flowers and from preening, they get to be really smooth and shiny. So that'll help us determine sometimes whether the bird is a young bird or the bird is older than a year old. So we're going to look at the corrugation. We already know by the throat that this is a mature bird. Another thing we're going to measure here is the length of his longest wing feather. That's another data point that ornithologists like to know. So his wing is 40 millimeters. So this is a mature male bird, and we know that because of that red throat, and he's actually going to be smaller than the females, or even smaller than the immature birds. Now the next thing we're going to look at is how much fat he has on him. And if you're a hummingbird, it's a good thing to be fat, okay? So I'm going to take this straw and blow his feathers up on his stomach, and the feathers will blow up like that, and you'll see some purple stuff, and that's his meat, that's his abs. And underneath that you'll see some yellow stuff, and that's his fat down here. But remember, it's a good thing to be fat if you're a hummingbird. So he's got just a little bit of fat in there.
Yeah.
So hopefully he'll hang around here a few more days and feed before he heads south. And then we're going to weigh him. And we've already subtracted the weight of this little net and the weight of this little clip from the scale here. And he's going to weigh about as much as a penny. So he weighs about 3.5 grams.
Where's the hummingbird?
He's in the bag. He's gonna come out.
So, and we know that this is a mature male because of that bright red throat. And depending on the angle of the light from where you're at, it may look bright red or it may look black. Those feathers aren't really red at all. That red color you see there is a reflective color, as opposed to a refractive color that has color pigment in it. So sometimes you may see a hummingbird that comes to your feet, it looks like he has a black throat. It doesn't mean he's a black-throated hummingbird. If you watch him long enough, it'll probably flash that bright red. And on a sunny day, that bright red will get really bright, and that's called the gorget. And they use that to attract female hummingbirds. Now, to make sure there's no hard feelings with this guy, dump some of the rainwater out of there, we're gonna give him a free meal here. And even as stressed out as he is, after being handled,
he's coming to
he's
town.
not too stressed to eat. You see his little tongue sticking out there? Now, if you notice when he drinks, the top of his head wiggles, right?
Yeah.
That's because that's where his tongue joins in, actually. His tongue is 1.5 times as long as his bill. So his tongue comes in his mouth and wraps around his spinal column and joins up right up here. So that's why when he drinks, you see this wiggle right up there.
Interesting.
So his tongue is split so that one side of it goes this side around the spinal column and one side goes that side around the spinal column. So he doesn't suck water up, suck nectar up like a straw, he laps it up like your dog would do. Now, how fast is our heart beating right now? How many beats per minute?
72.
About 70, about 60, something like that. Right now, his heart is beating about 1,200 beats per minute.
Oh,
And if you'd like to, you can hold your finger out like that, and you can feel his heartbeat. Who wants to try that? And it'll feel just like a little motor going. Feel it?
yeah, like a vibrator kind of.
Can you feel it? So that would mean if our heart would have to beat 20 times between every one of our heartbeats to beat that fast. That's for big kids too.
That is amazing.
May I try?
You bet. And those of you that don't get to touch this hummingbird, there'll be another chance here in just a minute, I think. And you feel it? It's just going, and you can feel your heartbeat, and it's just going boom, 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 like that. So do you want to let it go for me? Since you were here really early? Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to hold your hand out really flat. Let me charge up his little batteries here. Okay, you're going to put your hand really flat like that, okay? And you're not going to close your hand. Promise me you're not going to close your hand, right?
Leave it open.
No, leave it open like that.
Leave it open.
There you
like
go,
Mama.
just like that. And we're going to set him right here. Now, Hummingbird's never seen the world upside down before, so he's a little freaked out, okay? So he may sit here for a minute, but everybody got your cameras ready? Here we go. And then when he feels comfortable, there he goes.
There he goes.
Good job.